Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. And as you can see, I've got a very special guest today. BaseDaKID is in the house. How you doing, Base? You okay?
Very well, man. I'm pleased to be here, and I'm proud that we're going to be doing this. So much respect to you, and respect to your channel and the chat.
Thank you, my friend. I've been trying to get you on for a long time, man, but I work such long hours. I'm usually recording my videos that I'm putting up at like 3, 4 in the morning. So it's good that we've both found the opportunity after so many months. And there are a few others as well that I've been promising to get on the channel. So it's good that we found this opportunity, and it's timely because we disagree slightly about how we interpreted last night's fight between Artur Beterbiev and Anthony Yarde. In my humble opinion, Anthony Yarde was able to hang with an elite fighter, cause him some uncomfortable problems. And it proved, in my opinion, that despite some technical limitations that he does have, and I did speak about them in my preview, he's proven his ability to hang at world level. He's shown that he's a world level operator, but you don't quite see it that way. So we're going to have a bit of a debate. So the floor is yours, Base. Please tell everybody why it is that you do not think Anthony Yarde is a world-class fighter.
Yeah, look, I mean, simple and plain. I'm not going to dispute or discredit his performance last night. He actually did as well as I kind of thought he would. Anyone who would have maybe watched my preview video would have said, look, he's going to have a big moment in 1 or 2 rounds in this fight, to a point where he may win that round, or it may give him some confidence. But ultimately, I see Artur Beterbiev just basically he's gonna make him engage onto the back foot initially. Then he's gonna try and make him have to move towards him to drain his gas tank, which was what we kind of saw in the first couple of rounds. Then ultimately go through the gears, and it would either be a corner stoppage or a brutal knockout in the 8th round. That's what I predicted, and it's pretty much what happened. Now, the performance itself was good. I'm not disputing that, and I'm not saying that he's not a good fighter. But in terms of being a world level fighter, I can't give him that, because he's had 2 fights at world, one elite, one world, if we're going to be fair, and both of those he's been knocked out in. His biggest achievement and his biggest win is at Commonwealth level, which some people may say is above British, and some people may say it's below British. But either way, it's not even at European level. So to me, until you win a world level fight, you can't be a world level fighter, as far as I'm concerned. Mixing it with people that are always going to beat you doesn't make you as good as them. And that's my reason to say that I don't think he's world level. I think he'll get there, but at this moment in time, hanging for 8 rounds, you still got stopped. Like, you was on your way to a vicious knockout, and the last time you was there, you got stopped. So until you win one, as far as I'm concerned, you can't be world level. That's just my opinion.
So here's the thing that I'm wondering, though, whether this is a question of definition or whether we just disagree. Because you'd agree that Beterbiev is an elite level fighter, right? So he's above world class. We agree on that sort of definition. Okay, so if that's the case, and he's lost to Beterbiev, who's say elite, Kovalev has been an elite level light heavyweight. By the time they fought, I accept that he wasn't elite anymore. So you could maybe make the case that he was world level at that point. So at that point, I could get it if you were to say that Anthony Yarde wasn't a world-class fighter at that point. But he has improved since then. So the question is, if he's up against a Beterbiev and he beats a Beterbiev, based on your definition, you would say that he's now beaten an elite fighter, which would make him an elite fighter. But does that mean if you fall short from elite, you cannot possibly be world class? Like, you're either European level or elite. How do you get in between that based on that Beterbiev fight?
To me, the only way I feel like he would have been able to say, all right, I'm world level, is if he was conclusively ahead on the majority of the scorecards. So say he won the majority of the rounds, not nip and tuck or swing rounds as you've seen. And we've seen 2 of the judges' scorecards, which quite frankly I think were disgraceful. But that being said, if he had even knocked him down, or he had one round in there whereby it was conclusive that in that round you've dominated it, I could have said, all right, you know what? You've taken this elite guy and you've gave him at least 1 round of hell. You're there. But he had moments in a few rounds. He had good moments in a few rounds. But even in those rounds, the person who finished the stronger in all that time was Beterbiev. It was almost like he was taking off the first part of the round, to let Yarde do what he wanted to do. And then he was saying, okay, so now I know where your energy is at. I'm just going to reverse it. And the fact that constantly Beterbiev, however we're going to say it today, he was doing the same traps almost throughout the entire fight, and Yarde was falling for it each time. So I feel like when you get to a world level, you're not going to constantly fall for the same track, like that whole walking back to the corner, making Yarde extend to shoot a shot, grab him, spin him, and now he's in the corner trapped. He did that almost every round, and Yarde fell for it almost every round. I don't feel like a world level fighter falls for the same trap so many times in a fight.
How many rounds did you give Yarde then?
I gave him 2. I gave him the first, and I gave him the 6th.
But you don't think that they were conclusive? None of them, is that?
Okay, well, the first one was the best round for him, in my opinion. But it wasn't like, oh, like he done so much better. It was just I feel like he was a bit faster, a bit sharper. The jab he done better. And Beterbiev, it was almost like he was trying to figure out the timing. It looked like he was trying to get the rhythm of what Yarde was doing. But even within that, I saw that Yarde, there was a lot of not herky jerky, but there's a lot of nervous energy, there's a lot of twitching, and even though he was moving his head, nothing was like in a rhythm calm. It would all look like it was like, anxious, and that's why it just seemed like from the end of that first round, his mouth was open, like the energy was kind of going from there. So even when he had success, he never felt like he was in control. He always felt like he was fighting from underneath almost, and that's why. But rounds 1 and 6 were the ones I gave him, but none of them were like, oh yeah, like you really, really done your thing. It's like I feel like you just did a bit more in those 2 rounds.
So here's the thing, right? I don't actually disagree with any of what you just said there in terms of him, exerting energy that was unnecessary in some ways. Beterbiev was very good with his foot pressure and stuff like that. But here's the thing, though. The best round he's had at world level was against Kovalev. That one round where he had him reeling. But overall, this was a better performance than the Kovalev one, right? So yeah. If your definition is to say, if he dominated even one round, I would have said, fair enough, he's proven a certain level. He did that against Kovalev. But that round doesn't make that performance better than this one. Because, look, I had Anthony Yarde actually ahead. So you're going to think I'm one of the disgraceful dudes like the judge.
I saw your scorecard. I saw it.
But here's the thing. I had the first round definitely to Yarde. I do accept that the other rounds that I gave Yarde, all of the others that I gave Yarde, the 2nd, the 5th, and the 7th, I think it was, I think they were all swing rounds. I do think they were very close rounds, all of them. The only one I felt was definitive for Yarde was the first. I thought he outworked Beterbiev. So I don't have a problem if all the swing rounds, if someone was telling me they went to Beterbiev, because I can understand the logic of that in the sense that, like you said yourself, you felt that Beterbiev was taking parts of the round off, conserving almost, and then finishing strongly in the last 30 seconds. Well, if it's a 3-minute round and Anthony Yarde's won the first 2.5 minutes, then it starts to become a debate of whether those last 30 seconds override those first 2.5 minutes. Now, in one of those rounds, he hurt Beterbiev as well in that first 2.5 minutes, and Beterbiev held on. So does that last flurry win him the round? In terms of the longevity of the fight, I agree with you. He might have absorbed more damage in those rounds, and that would play out as the fight's wearing on. I get that. I always felt that although I had Beterbiev down by 1, he had gears to go to. At no point in the fight did I feel like Anthony Yarde was winning the war, so to speak. But I felt that at any given point, he could land something big and turn it in his favor, and he was competitive. So I get what you're saying. But if you're inactive in a specific round and we're scoring it round by round, surely his activity gives him that round if he's the one landing more punches and he's affecting Beterbiev too. Do you not see it that way at all?
No, I mean, I see where you're going. Just before I answer that, I just want to go back to the Kovalev thing a moment. Now, the thing is, with this whole, it's almost, the Kovalev thing, I feel is like it's almost like a false blanket of Yarde's success. Like, so I've actually watched that fight several times, but literally I watched it just before the fight yesterday, right? And even within that 8th round, you see Yarde had like maybe a 20 to 30 second period in the middle of towards the back end, but the middle of the round where he had success. But the whole rest of that round, Kovalev was landing flush straight right hands on him, landing the jab. Like Yarde had 30 seconds of success in there, and he won the round maybe by the fact of a left hook which pushed Kovalev back into the ropes. But there was no point in that round where Kovalev's eyes looked spacey, where he looked visibly like damaged, because even after Yarde hit him with that left hook, when he went to throw the right afterwards, Kovalev slipped it and actually caught him with the right. And that was what was able to sort of offset the rest of the aggression for that round. So while he did win the round based on, obviously, yeah, he had a good salvo in there, I always look at that and say to myself, I could actually have given that the other way if I really wanted to do that. Now, if we break that into this one, as you're saying, because again, I'd have to apply that exact same metric to this, which I'm going to be fair. Yeah, if Yarde is doing the better work for 2.5 minutes of a round, realistically, you should be winning. You should win the round on activity, punches landed, and all of that. However, what you have to look at is while he was having success in the round, like it's not like Beterbiev did nothing for those 2.5 minutes and just let Yarde do what he's doing and then just backs him into the corner and unloads for 30 seconds. He's also eating jabs flush from Beterbiev at the same time. He's eating backhands as well. He's getting caught with some stuff, but he's also still eating his own work. So Yarde may be slightly ahead, but they're still doing what they're doing. And then Kovalev is just finishing strong right at the end. I mean, not Kovalev, sorry, Beterbiev is finishing strong right at the end to the point where now he's just totally taken everything away from Yarde because Yarde can't do anything except tuck up and take damage. And that's why
I don't think you can compare the two because Egis Klimas, the manager of Kovalev at the time, if you look at the end of that round, he looks around and he blows this sigh of relief. Kovalev was reeling, man. I don't think Yarde at any point in those 2 rounds where the last 30 seconds he was getting lit up, don't get me wrong. But at no point did he look like he's about to go. Whereas with the Kovalev situation, it did look like you said he didn't look spacey. To me, he did. To me, it looked like he was 1 or 2 big shots away, potentially. I don't know. I felt like it was close. But listen, don't get me wrong. I do feel like he was comprehensively outboxing Yarde. But here's the thing. Although when we were talking before about whether Kovalev was elite level at the time, if he wasn't elite level, and I don't think he was, to be fair, I don't think the Kovalev that went on to fight Canelo next fight was elite Kovalev, prime Kovalev. But that's a physical element. There were rumors that he used to drink a lot, something that Team Ward spoke about in the preview, in the build-up to their fight. And obviously, we know that he was susceptible to body shots. And if you're drinking, you're inflaming the liver. So you're exacerbating that situation. So from a physical perspective, he deteriorated, no doubt. But in terms of sheer boxing ability, just boxing know-how, technique, he was still an elite fighter. And it was boxing technique that was causing Yarde the issues in that particular fight. And I think he's grown since then. So, I mean, I do get what you're saying in the sense that, you know, that one round, it's reflective in some ways in the sense that, you know, a Yarde may have had the majority of it, but there was some serious damage that he accrued towards the end of the round. So I do get that. But I do think every round, apart from maybe the third and the fourth, I thought Beterbiev started to establish himself a lot more there. But after that, I thought every round was pretty close. Like, at no point did it feel like Yarde is out of his depth here. And if he's up against an elite guy who's above world class, I don't know, man. To me, it just suggests to me that he's capable. So let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
The way I see it, typically speaking, and this can change based on how much depth there is in a division, right? But my definition is the elite guys are usually the 1 or 2 top guys, sometimes 3, depending on how stacked it is. They're the guys that are usually in the conversation for top 20 pound for pound. After that, the top 10, to say from position 3 to 10, they're the guys I tend to consider world class. 11 to 15 is sort of periphery of world class, the edge of world class. Because I know you were saying you didn't feel like Chisora's ever proven himself to be world class either and stuff like that. So, in other words, the way I see it, if you're a top 10 guy, it means when you look at the other top fighters in the division, you're able to cause the very top guys, the elite guys, some problems. You're able to perhaps beat some of the other top 10 guys. Where would you rank Anthony Yarde based on the eyeball test in terms of the top positioning in the light heavyweight division? How do you rate him? Is he top 10? Is he top 15? Do you see him outside of that? While you're thinking, I'll read you BoxRec's top 15. Yeah. So they've got Dimitri Bivol at number 1, Beterbiev at 2, Callum Smith at 3, Joe Smith Jr. at 4, Gilberto Ramirez at 5, John Pascal at 6, Joshua Buatsi at 7, Baldelik at 8, Anthony Yarde at 9, Dan Aziz at 10, a fight that I know you've called for, the Dan Aziz fight. Mikhalkin at 11, Andre Durrell at 12. They've got Beterbiev at 13, McCrory at 14, Craig Richards at 15, Fan Long Meng 16, Bosel 17, Ishmailov 18, Lyndon Arthur 19, and Papeloni at 20.
I'll put in between sort of 9 and 15. So bottom of the top 10 or sort of top to mid of the 10 to 15.
So yeah, so that is consistent then with you seeing him as like European, or you're basically saying he's periphery world class. So you're consistent. I can't. I'm not saying you're inconsistent. Your position is consistent. I just rate him, I guess, a bit higher than you do. But here's the thing. This is the thing, that the point I wanted to make before. I'm being a bit of a hypocrite because in the past, one of the things I've always said is that if you do not have a deep CV to act as a guarantor for your reputation, if you then lose a fight when you step up, you can't complain when people mug you off afterwards and lowball your rating. So I've said this, for instance, I've never spoken about Anthony Yarde in this regard, but I've spoken about people like David Benavidez. He's looking to step up now to fight. He wanted to fight Canelo Alvarez, but his CV is very thin. Now, if he goes and beats Caleb Plant, which is being touted as a fight, then he loses to Canelo. He's still got a good win on his record. He can still say, look, I'm one of the best light heavyweights, one of the best super middleweights in the world. But if he was not to fight Plant and go straight into that Canelo fight and he's to fall short, well, then you turn around and you say, well, what's David Benavidez's best win? So anything that I then say, yeah, he's world class, it's just a subjective opinion. There's no objective sort of data to back it up. So I'm being a bit hypocritical here because that is essentially what you're arguing. That is your viewpoint, essentially. But here's the thing, though. When do we draw the line with that and be, what? For instance, Tank Davis. What's Tank Davis's best win? Why do we consider him to be a world-class fighter? Why is Caleb Plant even a world-class fighter? He's been in with Canelo and gave a good account of himself, but what's his best win? So if Benavidez does beat Plant, does that then catapult him to world-class? What if Plant ain't even world-class? So how do we gauge it, basically? Is it, unless they all fight each other, which they're often not, does that mean you can be in a position where there are no world-class fighters in a division? And it's just the elite?
No, I get what you mean. And look, I will say this, and I don't know if you've ever heard me say this before, but people like Tank Davis, and I don't rate them the same as everyone else. I don't actually think they'll that because they haven't proven it. As everyone could talk about eye test, but the eye test has to be quantifiable also to who you're fighting, because anyone can look elite fighting someone that's nowhere near their level or someone they've drug up from 2 weight divisions below. So with regards to that, fair enough. Now, you're 100% right. They're not fighting each other, which therefore makes it hard to suggest who is the top guys and who isn't. So with someone, for instance, Joshua Buatsi is number 7 in the box rec one, right? But he'll be number 1 maybe in the IBF or somewhere around there. They'll be in a higher rating, but you could probably say his best win is Richard Bolotniks, who is European level. So at least we could say he's at that level because that's where he's fought.
Oh, do you rate Bolotniks above Craig Richards?
Oh no, but I mean, he's won the European title. So in that sense, I'm saying that in terms of accomplishments, yes, he had 5 losses and everything, but that's where he's accomplished. So we can say that's kind of the level he's reached. So you beat someone there, you're in and around that level. Richards, again, Spider Richards, like one of my guys. I always used to say to me was the best light heavyweight in the country. And I stuck by that and I defend it. Even now, I still feel like he could have a shout to do that, in the next fights, whatever. But I can't even say he's world level. He had a great performance against Bivol to a lot of people. But even then, it's like, again, you lost. And there's been no other victory after that is in and around that level. So to me, I feel like the only way you can really then get given that title, if you're not going to fight the other guys who are in and amongst the top 10, then you have to beat the champs. And if you can't beat the champs, then I can't consider you world level, unless you're going to fight the other guys who are considered the challengers. And then if you get a win over one of them, then okay, cool. You can say that you're mixing it in and around the top of the division. That's the only way I can do it. If there's no other names that you're going to fight, we're going on faith. I don't want to go on faith with him because he hasn't given me enough to go on faith on, if you say, because the resume isn't good enough.
But the problem is, if there aren't that many fighters whose resume is good enough at light heavyweight, how do you then ascertain? So, for instance, you gave Spider Richards as an example, and you said he's your guy, but you can't really put him up there because although he gave a great account of himself against Dimitri Bivol, at the end of the day, he doesn't have those big named scouts on his CV, for instance. But the problem with that is that you look at somebody like Dimitri Bivol, he hasn't had a knockout since Sullivan Barrera in 2018. So if going the distance against an elite level fighter, rather than the overall display that you give, is the litmus test, well then, does anybody that goes the distance against somebody like Bivol automatically become a better fighter than Anthony Yarde, who was in against a puncher and happened to get stopped, but might have given a better account of himself? So, for instance, Umar Salamov didn't win a round against Dimitri Bivol. He got absolutely schooled, and yet he went a distance. Whereas Anthony Yarde gave some problems to Beterbiev. Even if you only gave him one round, there were some exciting rounds in there, but he got stopped. So which is the better performance? Why should I rate it higher just because he made the final bell against an elite level fighter when, you know, at the end of the day, he didn't come close to winning? Styles do make fights.
No, I know what you mean, but what I was saying with the difference between them two is we know at this point in time, Bivol very much, he doesn't put on the pressure like that. He goes the distance. He'll bank the rounds. He'll do what he needs to do to win. It's a bigger achievement to go the distance with Beterbiev that no one's gone the distance with because he hasn't let them, than it is to go the distance with Bivol. So in that sense, I would rate Yarde a lot higher because he done something that no one else has done. Even if you lose, you've been able to go all 12 rounds and see the final bell. That's what I mean by that. That's a to me, it's a different metric. Like there's intangibles in all of it. So that's the intangible for those two.
But then can't you argue that he has done something that a lot of other fighters haven't done by giving the account of himself that he did against Beterbiev? For instance, Joe Smith Jr., massive at the weight, former world champion, he got obliterated in 2 rounds. Yarde did a lot better than Joe Smith Jr. So if we're comparing performance versus performance, even guys like Marcus Brown, Beterbiev was a little bit slow to start, but Marcus Brown never looked like he was ever going to win that fight. It just looked like a question of whether they were going to stop the fight on the cut or whether perhaps, you know, Marcus Brown could possibly make the final bell, but he was getting lit up. He has been dropped by the likes of Callum Johnson. But at the end of the day, although he got dropped by Johnson, he was battering Johnson, man. Like Johnson he did really well, actually. He did. Tactically, he did well. But you could see that he was getting bullied for much of the fight. Anthony Yarde didn't look like he was a deer caught in the headlights. Doesn't that count for something? Because I know in your video, you were saying Callum Johnson you considered to be world-class. He's retired now. But if he's comparing to these other guys who are world-class or former world champions and he's been more competitive, doesn't that count for something?
No, I didn't say Callum Johnson. I said Callum Smith.
Oh, Callum Smith, did you say? Okay, fair enough. All right, but then Callum Smith hasn't really got world-class pedigree at light heavyweight.
That's true, but he's been at world level, and he's fought guys. What's the guy's name? Castillo, who was a world level fighter. He's actually had victories in and around those top 10 guys before Bivol beat him and before Smith did what he done to him to announce himself to the division, plus his pedigree from previous. So that's why I will give him that grace to say, okay, yeah, you've moved up to a new weight class, but you are still at least a proven world level fighter because you've been to the top of a division, and right now you're in and around that top 5. He's no lower than that in this current division, in all division standings. So
okay, I'll ask you one last question to close it off. Right. If you don't believe Yarde's world class, would you be 100% sure that, or very confident even, that he loses to the other guys that you would class as world class? Would he lose to Joe Smith Jr.? Would you pick Callum Smith, Joe Smith Jr., Gilberto Ramirez? Would you pick these guys above Anthony Yarde?
I'd pick Callum Smith. Joe Smith Jr., I'm not sure. That one to me is 50-50. And Ramirez, I'd probably pick Ramirez just off size because they're gonna fight in a very similar style, and it's literally gonna be about who's gonna outstrength the other one because it's not gonna be a movement fight. So I'd give him one out of those 3, or best chance of one out of those 3, in my opinion. But
Fair
that
enough.
doesn't mean he wouldn't. And again, if he was to beat any of those guys, then I'll say, okay, yeah, you're definitely at this level now. But until you do it at a decent enough level, I just can't give it to you. And that's just how I'm looking at it from my perspective.
I get it. Very consistent. It's a very objective method of looking at it. I can't undermine that. Me personally, though, I think we have to provide a bit of context. I'm just sharing my position. And I think that if I match him up against any of the guys outside of the top two, I start to see ways in which either guy could potentially win the fight. And that's what makes him world class to me. It means that he can hang at world class level. Guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please give the channel a like, but also go to BaseDaKID's channel on YouTube. Check out his channel, help his channel grow, and leave your comments in the section down below. Let me know if you agree with me or if you agree with BaseDaKID. Base, you want to say anything before we go?
I just want to say I'm glad we actually able to do this. I've been waiting to jump onto your channel for a while. Watch all your content. It's brilliant. You are one of the best in the game, and it's an honor to have had this dialogue with you. And the fact that two men can do this respectfully, no trash talk, no raised, elevated voices, all that good stuff. This is what I live for. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
Of course, man. Like I've always said on this channel, critical thinking requires your ability to be able to engage with other people. You might learn something from them, or they might learn something from you, and that's how people grow. And there's no need for people to be shouting above each other or anything like that. We keep it respectful. We're able to disagree. Everyone, please let your views be known in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks, everyone. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.